Hi, and welcome to the Money Coaching Program. We are at the first step, and the first step is where you'll get this email with there's a video which this will explain to you how the tool works, and also the tool itself, which is a very good record that we're going to keep and use going forward to help us understand your numbers and make sure that they all fit, and make sure that they all fit your long-term goals. And so the first step when you get the email is to save a copy of the tool to your computer so that you can edit it and save it without losing any of the contents. When you do open it up, do enable macros, because there's a number of macros that make the whole thing work. But I'll show you now, I'll go through how it works. So we start off on the About You page. And of course, you start off by putting your name at the top. So if this was me, I'd be putting in my name. Relationship status, you put in, if you're single, leave it single, otherwise change to couple. Dependents, I've got no dependents living at home, but you would put in any kids. And with all the way through the spreadsheet, what you'll see is when you click on one of these colored boxes, if it's a white box, it probably means we're not going to do much with it, but the colored boxes we're going to edit, and you'll see all the time the little arrows will appear, giving you the choice of which way to go. So you've got here renting, living with family, or your own home. If you click renting, then you'll see another box pop up, which will be how much rent are you spending per week. So if you're renting, you would put that in there. Otherwise, you might just leave it as your own home. And then we need to explore your goals. And it's important that we understand your goals, because when we look at your budget, what we want to make sure is that you're going to achieve your goals, and that where we're making a trade-off, we know that we're either having to compromise the goals somewhere, or we're compromising on our week-to-week living because we're going to hit our goals. And if we don't tie those things together, then it'll all feel a bit like we're trying to be either too tight on a budget when we shouldn't be, or we're being too relaxed on a budget when actually we've got more important things to focus on. So you'll notice that this is split into three sections. There's short term, which we call sort of 1 to 2 years. Medium term is 3 to 10 years. And then long term is that 10 to 30 year mark. Now, when we're looking at property, we're typically looking at 10 years plus in any property. And so this is actually designed to make us think a little bit more about the things that we're doing. So the first thing is holidays. Holidays are super important. They give us something to look forward to. They punctuate our years, and they give us things to look back on in later life. So I would strongly encourage you to have a plan for holidays every year. But if you've got holidays lined up in the next 1 to 2 years, then you would just simply write this in here. And for us, this might be trip to Vietnam. Medium term, this is where we might say, for example, in the medium and long term for us, we might want to have a Asian trip each year, and Europe every third year. That might be our plan. Don't worry if it doesn't fit. We'll still be able to read it. It's fine. But that might be the same for both of these for us. And it's extended, and that's fine. I don't know what happened there. I'm just going to undo that and copy the text instead. Now, when it comes to family, for me, this is pretty straightforward because my kids are all grown up, left home and everything else. But if you're looking at this and saying, well, in the next 1 to 2 years, I'm currently single, I'm looking to not be single anymore, or we're a couple and we're maybe thinking about kids in the next 1 to 2 years, or if you've already got kids, you would say, well, in the next 1 to 2 years, they're still in preschool or what stage they're going to get to. In the 3 to 10 year mark, we then have to assume that if you've got kids, they're getting older, and if you haven't got kids, that maybe they come into this plan here. And then the longer term, 10 to 30 years, is where we start to think about kids being much older, about family situation being slightly different. And so just write in what you think you would like to happen, or what you expect to happen. These are not necessarily targets that we're going to hold you accountable for and saying you must get married by a certain time. or have kids by a certain time, because we don't need that kind of pressure. The reason for writing these things in, though, is that when we talk about property, we need to make sure that the property that we're looking to buy matches the needs that we're going to have in the future and not just the needs we have now. So, for example, property could be in the next 1 to 2 years could be to buy your first home. It could to be buy your first investment. In the 3 to 10 year mark, you might think about, for example, buying a family home, or you might think about buying another investment property, or it may be into the 3 to 10 year mark where you buy your first home. So first home, family home, investment properties, these are the kinds of things to think about, but I just want you to think about them in the context of your family situation. So if you are in a situation where you're going to have, teenage kids in the next 10 years, then I want you to be thinking about what kind of property would meet that needs, and not try to buy something in the next 1 to 2 years that won't meet that need. Now, celebrations are, these are celebrations that might cost you money. So, for example, if you're planning a big 30th or a big 40th or a wedding, or you're planning, for example, for me, we know that we've got my brother's wedding to go to. So we would put that in that's in the UK. That's coming up soon. But any big events that they become predictable now, that we can say, well, we know that we're going to hit 40 at a certain time. We know that we're going to have our 10th anniversary at a certain time, or we know that we're thinking of getting married if we're just starting out. But these are celebrations that we think we're expecting to have that we might need to save for. If your dad's having a 70th birthday and you're just planning to pop round his for a bit of cake, we don't need to write this in here. But if your dad's having his 60th birthday and you plan to send him to Vegas for the weekend, then you might want to put that in there as something that's going to cost you money. The last section is other big things, and this could be things like private schooling, cars, big things that you think you'd like to buy or like to have at a certain stage. So we can write those into these boxes. Now, the last section we're going to look at is retirement. Now, if there's a couple, then put both ages if you're going to retire at different ages. Otherwise, we're going to look at, we just need to know, what do you think retirement might be? But then the next step is then what is actually retirement? Because for some people, retirement is going from full-time to part-time work, or it's to go from full-time work doing something where it's a bit of a penance to a job where they might be working for a not-for-profit or something else where you're willing to take it. You want to still keep working and being productive, but you're not so concerned about the income anymore. And then lifestyle is where we think about, for example, how much we want to spend in a year. What are some of the hobbies that we might have that might be expensive, and so on, so that we're not just thinking about retirement as being, I've stopped working and now I'm living on the pension at home, and I've barely got enough money to live on. So important to get an idea of what that looks like for you, and that's the goals. Once we've got the goals set up, then we're going to go into the actual budgeting side of things, where we understand the incomes and outgoings. Now, this is all done from the Setup tab. We can either click Go to Setup, or we can click the Setup tab, and then this takes us through to the Setup. Now, the Setup has got two different areas. One area is where lots of numbers seem to appear, none of which are editable. They're all formulas. So we're going to update them by clicking on a link that will take us to another page. But what we're looking to do is to move from your traditional setup with your old bank to having the 5-2 setup, where you've got some accounts with the old bank and some accounts with a new bank, that we're going to have card access to the new bank and no card access carried with us with the old bank. This is the simple 5-2 setup for a single person, and a more advanced setup is for a couple with multiple goals and that want multiple accounts. We normally recommend that couples have an everyday account each, but some couples choose to have a fun account each. Some couples choose to have just one between them. Now, we'll get into what goes into those accounts in a minute, but first we'll look at how what we want you to do the next step. So before we finalize all this, we're not expecting you to finish everything here. But the three things I want you to do before we actually catch up face to face is firstly to make sure that we've got. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I've just realized something from another page. So the first thing we want to make sure you've got is the goal set up. The second thing I want you to do is the bills, the income. And the third thing is the bills. If you can have a crack at the other stuff as well, great. But we're going to go through those things in detail together. And so don't worry too much or don't get too hung up about them. I'll just go through how they work so that you can have a crack. But the bills really is detail work. You're going to have to trawl through statements and old bills and stuff like that. And your income should come from pay slips and tax returns and the like. So the first thing we're going to do is update the income. Now, with all of these figures, you'll find that there is a drop-down menu for frequency. Now, just because this says fortnightly, I don't want you to say, oh, I'm getting paid monthly, so I'm going to put half my monthly amount in fortnightly. If you get paid fortnightly, put fortnightly. If you get paid weekly, put weekly. If you get paid monthly, change it to monthly. You'll see it changes the annual figure until you actually put in what the correct figure is. But please, when we look at this a year from now, we're going to want to look back and know where did we get the information from. And so we'll be able to clearly see it was on the pay slip at the time. It was money landing in your bank account every fortnight at the time. So therefore, it's got to match something that we can verify. Your partner's base pay, if that's fortnightly as well, if you're in a couple, then you put that in and put in what they're working. And that will add up your income. Then we go back to the setup. And we can either go back to the setup or we can scroll along the tabs. We can go from income to bills, or we can go back to the setup and go update bills. Now, bills is where most of the work happens because it's where most of it's the things that we know about. Now, in this page again, don't worry about what we've written in here. If you get your council rates monthly, put them in monthly. Probably you don't, but if you get a quarterly rates bill, put in the quarterly, put in the amount, and then it'll all make sense and it'll be easy to check. Now you'll notice that the rent figure in here is blank and it's also not editable. And the reason is because we should have filled that in the About You section under rent. And in this case, we're living in our own home, so there isn't any rent. Okay, so within the bills, we're now going to go through and put in everything. Now, there are 4 pink boxes. The 4 pink boxes are things that you're not allowed to make zero. Because if you plan to have zero home maintenance and repairs, maybe that's the case if you're renting, but even if you're renting, there's always a chance that you might want to do something around the house. You might want to put up some shelves. You might want to buy a new doormat. You might want to put something in there. And so we want you to estimate what that figure is. It doesn't have to be accurate, but zero is going to be wrong. Zero is definitely an underestimate. So we'd rather you put something in there and then we know that it's a figure that we can later, it's a balancing figure that we're going to use with a couple of others. You've got the usual electric, gas, water, internet, pay TV, home phone, etc. Education, if you've got regular school fees, TAFE, and so on. Health, we've got private health insurance. Income insurance, if you don't have income insurance yet, please reach out to us. We will help you put that in place. Income protection insurance pays you if you get sick or injured, and it's especially good if you're sick or injured for longer than, say, 2 or 3 months, and for potentially a protracted period, because it can pay your bills for you when life gets in the way. It won't cover you for being made redundant or involuntary unemployment insurance, most of them, but it will cover you if you get sick or injured. So again, put in a figure here. If you're not sure, let us know and we can quote you on that later. So here's 2 more pink boxes. Doctors and dentists, we don't know how much they're going to cost, but estimate. Just put a figure in for the year. We don't want you putting zeros in there. I just put some numbers in there to start with to remind you, but if you try and delete that figure, then you'll see it's a pink box, and it doesn't like it because it needs to be not 0. Okay. Things like vets, if you've got a pet, obviously, and then you've got all your transport costs like your insurances, road tolls, parking, and here we have the 4th pink box, which is repairs and maintenance. Now, if you don't have a car, then this can be 0. Otherwise, it should be a number. And in fact, if you don't have a car, you've probably got a bicycle or something else, and you should have something in there for repairs and maintenance. Between the 4 pink boxes, we don't really know how much they're going to be, but we know if we put them all at something, it may be that in 1 year we have loads of dentist bills but nothing to spend on the car, and then another year we might have lots of money to spend on the car and nothing to spend on dentists and doctors. So we just put a figure in for each one, and they're just estimates, and then we know that we've got some money to do those things with. Now, if you've got any other regular expense which we categorize as a bill, then you can add that in here and do write down what it actually is. Because again, if we look at this in a year's time and you've put in that you're spending $48 a fortnight on something and it just says other expense, we'll be sitting there going, what was that for? And we won't remember. But if you write it in now, then it will tell us what it is. And it'll be easier to refer to in the future. So once we've done all the bills, you can add as many new expenses as you want. You just click the button and another line pops up. Or it should, and maybe it doesn't. I think because that one's blank. But anyway, moving on. You can either now go back to the setup, or you can just click onto the everyday. Now, the next page is the everyday and the fun. Work on the basis of either putting a total figure for the week or a weekly expense line by line. So the weekly stuff is for stuff you do week in, week out. If you don't do it week in, week out, put it in the fun expense instead. So things like supermarkets, fruit and veg, going out to bars and clubs, any alcohol we buy at home, any cigarettes, restaurants, takeaway snacks, lunches, coffees, anything you do weekly. If you go to restaurants once a month, don't put it in here, put it in monthly. Okay? But you can either add up all these figures here, or you can simply say, I'm just going to have $200 a week and that'll do me. And now you see everything else disappears. If we delete that and we say, oh no, I'm going to put in my groceries are 150, and you'll see now that the total has disappeared. So we're either going to fill in above the red line or below the red line. Okay. In time, in the future, we'll only use the ones above the red line, but sometimes we find it easier to add these things up. So that's the weekly account. This is for things that you do every single week, and you're going to have an allowance for that. And then we get the, I'll go straight to the fun account and come back to the holidays. So the fun account works the same way. It's just that now it's a monthly amount, and you might just say, I'm going to get $800 a month, and that's enough. But we typically get asked, well, what's that supposed to cover? Well, it covers things like clothes and gadgets and gifts and beauty treatments and special events and weekends away, these kinds of things. So you can either estimate the cost of all these things and add them up, or you just simply put in a figure for the month. That's what you're going to have, and then you'll be able to spend it on whatever you want, and it doesn't matter if that changes month to month. Okay, so that's the basics of the weekly and the fun. Now, holidays works a bit different. So holidays is a goal, and this is where we might say that we might have a normal holiday every year and spend a couple of $1,000. Well, when do you need it every year? That's great. You know, if you want to spend $1,000 on each year and that's enough, that's fine. And if you say, well, but every third year I want to spend $20,000, on a big European trip or American trip or whatever it happens to be, we put the figures in that way because then it will total up what we need to save each year in order to be able to do that. Okay, so all it's doing is saying 20,000 divided by 3 is 6,600, plus 1,000 is 7,600 a year. Okay, when we come later to matching this up, we'll do this together. We might find that we need to push some of these figures longer term or make some of these figures smaller, and I'll normally encourage you to spend more year to year, oops, not less. Just simply because I love holidays and think they're awesome. I think we all should take more. But they also, because they build memories. So over our lifetime, we tend to focus on the tangible things that we go out and buy, but what we remember when we're 70 and looking back at our lives is our family, the people, the friends, and the special occasions and trips that we did, not what phone we had 40 years ago or whatever. So that takes us through all the basic ones. For the advanced account, so if there's two of you and you say, well, we're going to have an everyday account each, we simply label an everyday 2. We then get a new figure here, which then says, okay, update the everyday 2 account. And again, we now have a similar account to the everyday 1, where we can put a figure above the line or below the line. Now, for couples, groceries are one of the biggest expenses that you're going to have. It is a weekly expense. It has the characteristics of being a variable item of expenditure, not a bill. Some people think that groceries are a bill, but bills are more have the characteristics of they're set and forget and they're fixed. Groceries can go up and down depending on where you shop, the cuts of meat that you buy, the quality of groceries, how many times you do convenience shops, all those things. And what we know is that when we give people an amount to spend, they have an incentive to spend less than they thought they were going to on boring stuff like groceries, so they can do more fun stuff like going for coffee with friends or having brunch on the weekend. But there's more of an incentive to do that, knowing that you can spend that money on other things. Whereas when we make groceries a bill, people just say, oh, it's a bill, it just costs what it costs. And so there's no incentive to save money. And so what could be a $200 a week shop becomes a $300 a week shop because there was no incentive for us to improve on it because we mentally saw it as a bill. Whereas when it's part of our weekly spending, I know that in our case, my wife Kelly, she never used to do the shopping, and she used to love shopping, doing all the shopping at Kohl's, and always buying the brand label stuff and never the own label things, and always buying the best of everything. As soon as she was given the weekly allowance for the groceries and it was seen as coming from her money, she suddenly started shopping at Aldi, buying the own label, because then she knew she had more money to spend on other things that were important to her, like getting her nails done or buying clothes or going out or something that was much more important to her than having those brand label things from the supermarket. So that's the reason why we set it up that way. If we go back to the setup, if we now want to have a fun account each, we simply add another account. And then we say, well, what sort of account is it? We say it's a fun account. And then again, we have the option of updating it. If we then add an account for something like Christmas, then we label it as Christmas. And now it says update the goals. So Christmas is something that happens once a year. And so we might put for Christmas that we need to have $2,000 a year. And so now when we go back to the setup, it's automatically given us, it'll work out how much the payments are. So go through, estimate what you can, but please, please, please do the goals as best you can. Get your income right, get your bills right. Anything else is a bonus because we will go through the rest of the stuff together. And I have lots of experience at dealing with lots of people on figuring out what's normal and what's not. So that's where we want to get to. So if we can get those 3 things done, once you've completed it, save a copy to your own desktop. Send us the copy back that you've used, and then we book in a Zoom chat and we try and get on track. The aim is to start this as soon as possible. And ideally, when we do the fun account, we want the money to land monthly, and we want it to land on the first of the month. So whatever's the next month coming up, that's when we want to start. So if we're 3 weeks away from the end of the month, then it's not as much rush. But you know, I've just seen somebody today, and the month end is coming up in only a few days' time. So we're trying to get it finished this month, so that the first of the month they get their monthly fun money. The next piece of homework that we're going to have, if you can get it done, then we would love you to get it done. And that's to, if you are going to have an everyday account each and a fun account each, then these are accounts that we want opened up with a new bank. We don't want them with your existing bank. We don't want you to have card access or to have phone access where you can simply move money between your accounts. We also want to deal with a bank that doesn't talk to your existing bank. So if your pay is coming into your existing bank account and we give you a weekly allowance with another bank, we're going to deliberately choose a bank that doesn't talk to your current one. And the way to figure that out, that doesn't need to be there, excuse me, might need to edit that out, is to look at OSCO. And I've just done a search on OSCO. So OSCO is the payment system that transfers money between banks. And so if the banks have got OSCO, money will move straight away between the banks. But if we choose a bank like ME Bank does not have OSCO. And therefore, if our new accounts are with ME Bank, then any transfers we make are going to happen overnight and not instantly. And so if we find ourselves in a situation where we tap our card and the card says no, and we go to our fun account, which is also with the same bank, and that's got no money in it either, then we can't simply go to our phone, move money between accounts, and find that we've got magically more money. We need to just say, I'm really sorry, I haven't got the money for this, and head off. Now, there is a trick that we sometimes use, which is to keep the card from your existing bank in the car, not in your wallet. If it's in your wallet, it's too easy, it's too tempting. But if it's in the car, it gives you space to think. So if you've just paid for a doctor's appointment, for example, then you might say, well, I'm really sorry, I don't have any money on my card. I'm just going to go to the car and I'll go and fetch it. And you'll go to the car and you'll fetch the card from the other bank, and you'll come in and you'll pay for that doctor's bill because it was a bill, and we know that we were meant to pay that from that other account. But of course, if we're just going and buying something randomly or buying some extra things at the supermarket that perhaps we didn't need, we're going to say, I'm just going to the car, I'll be back in a minute. And then we're going to go walking off to the car, and on the way down, we're going to think, maybe I don't really need that. And maybe now, since I'm in the car, I'll just go because I left the items in the store and it doesn't really matter. And so it just puts that brakes on you. Whereas if you've got it in the back of your wallet or somewhere else in your wallet or attached to your phone or attached to your watch, then it's too easy to go, oh, I don't have enough money. Wait a second, I'm all flustered and embarrassed. It's easier for me to tap my watch or my phone or move some money and then buy the thing that we should not have bought. And then we'll feel guilty and bad about it, as opposed to mildly embarrassed by saying that we're going out to the car. So ME Bank is one, but they let you search. You can search for any bank, and ING. A lot of people like ING. ING has OSCO. That means that if your other accounts are with Commonwealth Bank or St. George or Westpac, then they'll move money instantly with ING, and so that's perhaps not the best place to have your additional accounts. HSBC. HSBC, again, they don't have OSCO, but if you go to the OSCO website, osco.com.au, you can then go in and find out about your bank, put in a bank. If you've got a credit union that you like, that you want to work with, then fine, use them. But the aim would be to try and have these accounts with a different bank, so that it's deliberately difficult to access the money that's in our future and our bills and our holiday and our new car and whatever other accounts that we need, because that's all money that we're committing through our goals whereas this is money that we're spending week to week, month to month. Okay, so that's the homework. Get your goals done, get your income done, get your bills done. Open up the new bank accounts if you think you're ready. If you want to ask some more questions, we can do it at the next session. But at the next session, I really need the income, bills, and goals done, and then we can work through the others and make it fit. Because at the end of the day, we've got to make the numbers add up so that you're not committed to spending more than you should be spending based on your goals. So that's it from me. Any other questions, let me know, and do give us some feedback on the video as well. This is something new that we're trying out, so we'd love to have your feedback. Thanks for your time and have a great day.